Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And for those of you joining from Europe, good afternoon. Welcome to Common Sense Society's briefing on the political and strategic impacts of Poland's recent elections. I'm Piotr Stravinsky, Senior Fellow at the Common Sense Society. If you are new to CSS, welcome. CSS is an international educational network dedicated to strengthening citizen competency by promoting liberty, prosperity, and beauty. These are three timeless principles that change lives everywhere and constitute the political, intellectual, and cultural inheritance which constitute our shared civilization. As an international network, we at CSS closely track the changing tides of international politics and are grateful to have fellows, alumni, and members across Europe and Asia who can give us a local and visceral understanding of international headlines. In recent months, we've hosted briefings on Israel-Hamas war, free speech on college campuses, protests in France, Ukraine's reconstruction efforts, and today we turn to Poland, my home country. On October 15, Poland held elections that resulted in the victory of the Law and Justice Party, who ruled for the past 8 years. While the party will try to form a government, they fall short of holding a parliamentary majority. This poses many challenges that we would like to explore today. I'm honored to welcome the former US ambassador to Poland, the Honorable Georgette Moschbacher, and the president of the management board of the Polish Development Fund, Mr. Paweł Borys. Our first speaker, Ambassador Moschbacher, is an entrepreneur, an author, philanthropist, and diplomat. From 2018 to 2020, she served as the United States ambassador to Poland, leading top diplomatic, economic, and security issues in Central Europe, including laying the foundation for the US NATO ballistic missile defense site in Poland. She is the recipient of the Crown Cross of the Order of Merit of the Republic of Poland and the US Department of Army's Distinguished Public Servant Medal. Before government service, Ambassador Moschbacher was a leader in the intensely competitive cosmetics industry in the US. Mr. Paweł Borys is president of the management board of the Polish Development Fund, specializing in investments, management, macroeconomic analysis, strategic and financial planning, and company restructuring. Mr. Borys had a distinguished career in key financial institutions in Poland, including in the asset management branch of the Deutsche Bank, various investment funds, and the biggest universal bank in Poland, PKO BP, where he was essential in the PKO Group reorganization and where he implemented restructuring plan for the Ukrainian subsidiary of the PKO, Bank. He's widely published and is a double recipient of the Best Investment Fund Performance Awards in Poland. Thank you both for joining, and let me kickstart the meeting by asking questions. I'm going to start with Paweł, and then I'm going to turn to you, Ms. Ambassador. Paweł, for last 8 years, you were actively engaged in shaping the economic policies in Poland while successfully navigating Polish Development Fund. And before that, you also successfully managed reorganizations of key financial institutions, including Ukrainian Bank, which became one of the most profitable institutions in Ukraine. I would like to ask you two opening questions that would help our audience better understand the current situation in Poland. Yesterday, President of Poland designated former Prime Minister Morawiecki with the task of forming a new government. It seems that without a coalition, the Law and Justice Party might fall short of having the majority needed to enact legislation and thus ruling effectively. What does it mean for Poland? And what does the current situation mean for the Polish economy? Do you envisage any significant shifts in terms of economic policy, spending priorities, also investment? And that concerns also the delicate relations between the EU and Poland within the EU funds context, and how the current situation might affect relations with Ukraine. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me today. Yes, I'm the CEO of the Polish Development Fund for more than 7 years, and during that time, I was also the economic advisor of our Prime Minister, who actually held this position for the last almost 7 years. Before that, he was a Deputy Prime Minister responsible for economy. So I believe that the leadership in Poland regarding economic policy was very strong over that time. And clearly, we could see two periods over the last 8 years. One is between 2015 and 2018, which was very good for the economy. And actually, it was one of the best time regarding economic parameters of the economy in the last 3 decades. So Poland achieved to lower unemployment to the lowest level historically, and actually currently we are number three in the European Union in terms of the lowest unemployment. We have balanced public finances. We have achieved to have trade balance surplus. The inflation was under control, and the interest rate level was pretty stable. So it was very good time. And of course, since 2020, we are fighting with the subsequent shocks in the economy, very similar to the whole Europe and also US. First pandemic, then and distortion in supply chains, the energy crisis created by the destabilization of gas market by Russia in Europe, which resulted in significant inflation shock, especially in the Central and Eastern Europe, when double-digit inflation was visible in all of the countries. So it was pretty intensive 3-4 years when we were very strongly involved in fighting the consequences of the crisis, including war in Ukraine, during which Poland, as you know, received huge inflow of refugees, and it was also a big challenge for the whole society and also from the economic perspective. But currently it becomes very much visible that we are coming from all these economic shocks in so-called soft landing scenarios. So we are able to lower inflation rate, avoiding recession at the same time. Even today, we have pretty positive GDP figures from the economy showing that the performance of the economy is improving, and the macro parameters of the economy are pretty stable. Of course, we will see what would be the economic policy of the new government. Most likely scenario is that the new government in Poland will be approved around first or second week of December. Most likely it will be the government created by the current opposition party. So far, it is pretty much unclear what would be the new economic strategy, because of course during the political campaign we have a lot of promises and declarations, but as you know, after a few months it becomes more visible what really would be implemented. But generally I believe that Poland will see pretty positive economic development over the next 2-3 years. This would be the result of lower inflation, improved consumption as real personal incomes are growing again. We will enjoy large inflows of European Union funds. which was quite successfully negotiated by the current government, and it should boost investment in the course of the next 3 years. So the current forecast shows that the GDP growth next year should be around 2.5-3%, and most likely between 3-4% in 2025. So it should be more positive economic environment in the next few years, with the full stabilization of inflation, with stable labor market. The key question is, of course, the fiscal policy and then public finances. Poland decided to significantly boost defense expenditures. Poland actually currently is the country with the highest spending on defense in relation to GDP among NATO countries. We plan to spend more than 4% of GDP next year, which of course is a challenge for public finances at the same time. But I believe that there will be a political consensus that we need to continue this policy, and that the defense spending is a priority in the situation when the aggression from Russia and Ukraine showed that the security architecture in Europe is under threat. So, however, with growing economy, Poland at the same time should be financially stable and capable to spend a lot for defense, as our level of public debt to GDP is among countries with the lowest level of indebtedness, below 50% of GDP. So we have the financial capability to continue this policy. However, it is pretty clear that not all of the promises of the parties present in the campaign could be fulfilled.
Pavel, thank you very much, and I greatly appreciate your thorough and comprehensive response. Allow me to remind our guests that the Q&A function is open, so anyone who would like to ask a question to our participants is free to click the function at the bottom of the screen and then pose the question. Let me turn to Ambassador Mosbacher, and you were an ambassador to Poland in the period that was so well depicted by Pavel. You experience how Poland looks from the inside between this period of late second decade of the 21st century, and I wanted to ask you. You're also instrumental in bringing to life the 1 billion Three Seas Initiative Investment Fund, which was focused on developing cross-border energy, transport, and digital infrastructure years before Europe realized that over-relying on Russia is not a good strategy. So what impact, in your view, the political change in Poland might have on the regional economic and security cooperation? And what should be Poland's new government priorities, independently of the political change or because of this political change? And how the strategic partnership between Poland and the US could improve overall security and economic development in Central Europe? So these are three questions, but I hope you are the best person to actually answer them.
Well, I hope I can remember them in the order that you just outlined. But let me just start by saying that the one thing that I believe we can be certain of is that Russia will continue as an existentialist threat to Poland. And so I do think that the new government will continue with the policy of strengthening your defenses in Poland, and will continue to support Ukraine. Now, that's not to say that they may not cut some of that defense spending. It is, as just mentioned, it's the largest in to GDP and in NATO. But of course, Poland is the eastern flank of NATO. And so I think it's wise, given what we're seeing in Russia's intentions, that Poland continue to strengthen their security and their military. I don't think that will change very much. I think the question is now, with respect to economic outlook, et cetera, Poland has done an extraordinary job in terms of its growth. It has had continuous growth. It's really been the cornerstone of growth in the region. I think the 3 Cs initiative was truly brilliant in the fact that it strengthens the region, given the fact that any one of the 3 Cs countries may be too small to attract private sector money into infrastructure investing, but together it's very strong. You are growing at twice the rate of Western Europe. You have 100 million people, 2 trillion GDP. This is very attractive for private sector investment, as long as the new government doesn't take its focus off of the 3 Cs. I do have some fears there. The first fund was very successful. We are putting up a 3 Cs fund 2 and 3 now, one focused on energy and one on digital. And I would hope that the new government will support that, although that has not been necessarily what they have said in the past. I hope that's going to change, and that they will continue to support it, because I think it's the region cannot attract that kind of private investment country by country. It is much more powerful as the 3 Cs region, with 13 countries. As you know, Greece has just joined. The other, I would say, is that the new government will certainly be get back to the European mainstream with the EU. Certainly, there's going to be I think a renewal of the relationship between Poland and the EU under the new administration. I think that the only challenge there is regulations. The EU, I'll make no bones about it, I'm not a fan of EU's bureaucracy and regulations. If the new administration can keep those regulations from impinging on Poland's growth with respect to being a really good place to invest because of low regulations and regulations that are attract private capital, I think that Poland will continue to grow. With respect to its relationship with the United States, I think the U.S., our administration was very, let's say, happy to see the change. This new administration, I think they were worried about democratic backsliding. We heard a lot about that. I think that they feel that the new administration is going to make the necessary changes with the judiciary that they've been looking for. I also think that they have the opportunity to reset relationships not only with the EU, but with Germany as well. Now that one can look at that depending on your perspective, whether how positive that is. But I do think that that will be reset positively. My concern is if the new administration comes in with a vendetta, as often happens, and certainly we see it in the United States. It's unfortunate. They have to work with President Duda, who is still in office for a year and a half and does have a veto power. I think if they approach this without a vendetta, and I do believe that President Duda will work with them. I think he's basically centrist. He wants to work with them. I think a lot can be accomplished depending on their attitude. If this is going to be just a vendetta, I think you're going to find it, they're going to have a really difficult time reversing the policies of the last 8 years. That's going to be long and arduous, and it'll only be more difficult depending on that attitude. I think that they have an opportunity here to clean up the state-owned companies, which is, in my opinion, have dragged down your stock market. If they go towards the privatization and putting in a solid management, I think that will only enhance the economic outlook for Poland. So I think the opportunities are great. Sometimes change is good, but it will depend on whether this becomes a bloodbath, political bloodbath. Then I think this, harm comes from that. That will slow down everything. So it'll be interesting to see if they can rise above that and make the changes that are necessary and changes that are needed, but doing it in a way that they still work with the largest party, PiS, in a way that can get done.
So to sum up, both of you, Poland weathered the recent economic shocks very well. It seems it is very well positioned for the fast and robust economic growth, and it was critical to ensuring support to Ukraine while leading the Central Europe in pooling financial resources for cross-border infrastructure investment. It also comes out of this discussion that new priorities for the upcoming government should focus on resetting relations with the EU, Germany, supporting the PiS initiative, and avoiding internal vendetta, which might become problematic in the long run. I would love to ask you many other questions, but we actually have a couple of very good questions from the audience. And I think the one that goes across well to both of our speakers is about the investment that was planned by the previous government, and the question is whether the central communication port that is planned to be built in Poland would be maintained by the new government. So the question to Paweł would be whether the new political setup would keep the project. And the question to Ambassador Mosbacher would be whether the US would be eager to support Poland's investment and development of this hub. And that is also within the context of the security situation, because this kind of communication hubs, they do not only serve civil purpose, they might serve other purposes as well. So maybe we start with Paweł and then turn to Ambassador.
Sure. So first of all, I need to say that the first presentation of the Central Communication Hub was created in Polish Development Fund with the CEO of the LOT Polish Airlines. So of course, I'm very much in favor of this project. This is not only about Central Airport, of course, but this project is transformational for the whole transportation infrastructure in Poland, because it also consists of huge investment in railway infrastructure, but also roads. This is not only about 40 million potential passengers, but this is also important from the economic perspective with cargo and investments which are going after the improved infrastructure. So I hope that Central Communication Hub will be developed within the next 5 to 6 years and will be continued by the new government, because clearly Poland could take advantage of this location this time, and in this new economy with growing e-commerce and higher mobility of people, the higher interconnectivity with the region is extremely important. There is no central airport in the Central Eastern Europe. There's no airport hub in the whole region, and of course it has also the meaning from security perspective, as it was also visible during the war in Ukraine, because it was very critical that Russia was not able to take over the airport close to Kiev in the first weeks of the war, and it was pretty much essential. So I hope that it will be continued. There is an ongoing discussion around that, but which I believe was a surprise for the opposition, which is quite skeptical, is that more than 60% of Poles is in favor of these investments, and there is very limited number of people which would like to stop the continuation of this project. So I hope that it will be created. Maybe there will be some phases, but for sure, from the whole economy, it would be very, very important. At the same time, the energy transformation. So, for example, nuclear project. I hope that also would be continued, because it's essential from the energy security perspective.
Ambassador Mosbacher.
I would say that it is critical to invest in Poland's infrastructure. However, that plays out. We live in a very competitive world, and infrastructure is critical to that competitiveness. Poland, Central Eastern Europe in general, which is why the 3 Cs was put up, is behind Western Europe. In order to compete effectively, it is going to have to invest in its infrastructure, not only for security reasons, but for economic competitive reasons. And any investment in critical infrastructure, I think, is fundamental to the growth of the country, to the competitiveness of the country, Poland is really taking the lead in Central Eastern Europe. I think this project makes sense from that perspective. And I would hope that the new government will support this kind of advanced infrastructure spending. As far as the United States goes, with respect to their support, certainly the United States will support in infrastructure. As again, that's so fundamental today to security and competitiveness. However, I think we need to be realistic, given the economic challenges around the world, inflation, interest rates, etc. To think that the U.S. will be as heavily invested in these projects, I think those days are gone. I think that there's going to have to be new institutions like the 3Cs initiative and 3Cs funds set up to attract private sector money to, these are going to have to be public-private sector projects. And it will depend on how well they're structured to attract that private sector money, because I don't think the public sector, whether it's the US or anyone else, are going to be able to sustain these as they have in the past.
Thank you so much. And I have another question specifically to you. What is the role of the party politics on American-Polish relations? And what are the issues in which American support is bipartisan and clear? That would help us better understand the approach the current administration would have to the forming government in Poland. Ambassador.
Well, first and foremost, it's the fact that Poland is the eastern flank of NATO, and it's the security aspect is the United States understands the importance of Poland and its role in NATO. So that will continue to be a top priority. I would also say that our administration will look to some of these social issues with respect to LGBT, with respect to abortion, etc., that are high on the U.S. priority list, this administration. So they will, and media freedom, judicial reforms will continue to take be a priority. And I think there'll be more cooperation at that level. But bottom line, it is about security. And I think energy security is also a very high priority. The fact that the U.S. is clearly supporting the Poland's desire to have civilian nuclear, I think is critical to be able to meet the projections for climate issues. And Poland's been at the forefront of that. It is fortunate that it has both the private sector and the public sector involved in civilian nuclear. I think that's unique in the world. Poland has managed that brilliantly. I hope that, and the United States is clearly behind both of those initiatives. So I would think those would be your number one priorities with respect to the U.S.
Thank you so much. That's very informative. And we have another question. I'm still considering who should answer first. So I'm going to leave it to you. Maybe maybe Pavel, you can start, but Ambassador, please feel free to jump in if you know the answer. For the last 8 years, the former Polish government was very pro-American, and that was quite visible both in the media but also in the public statements, while the relationship with the EU was a little bit more strained. So the question from the audience is how this relationship between Poland and the EU and between Poland and the US going to look like going forward? Would the new government try to keep balance, or would they start relying significantly more on the European Union, Brussels, or in the case of resetting relationship with Germany, with Berlin? And under this big question, under this big umbrella, there is also a question about the investment. For infrastructure investment, would Poland, given that it has access to the European funds, would that be the primary source of investment for Poland, or would other initiatives such as the 3Cs initiative or closer cooperation with the US be as important source for investment going forward? So these are two questions, but please feel free to answer.
Sure. So maybe I will start from the second one, and with some reservation that I'm not the politician. And I work with the current opposition when I work in PKO BP as a managing director, and I work with this government for 7 years. So I know pretty well both parties. So from the investment perspective, I believe that we will see very positive trends. Currently, investments in Poland are growing 5%, which is pretty positive given the current unstable environment. And of course, the first positive effect of this election is that Poland will have access to the recovery fund. As you know, there was a clash between the current government and the European Commission on the final milestone regarding Supreme Court, and I believe that this deadlock will be solved, and at the beginning of next year we will see the inflows of money from the recovery fund, and we are starting next financial perspective of European Union budget, and the current government negotiated very attractive package of more than 700 billion Polish zloty, so more than $150 billion of inflows. Of course, currently these European Union funds represent smaller impact relative to the scale of the economy, of the GDP. Annually, this is 2-3%. So still this is visible, but it was not the scale which was 15 or 20 years ago. But still, especially when we are talking about infrastructure investment and central communication hub, a large part of investment, for example, in railways could be financed by European Union funds. So I believe that the next 3 years is another significant boost to infrastructure investment in Poland, given the local funds and European Union funds. But I also fully agree that we need to attract private capital. For example, in the Central Communication Hub, there is the interest of IFM, so Australian Infrastructure Fund, and then Vinci Airport, the French operator of airports, and very similar joint venture could be seen in other large infrastructure projects. And we also focus to promote, Polish economy from the perspective of portfolio investors or FDIs, because actually Poland could take the advantage of the current geopolitical situations when security matters more than the costs, and it's clear that many companies are trying to secure the supply chains, and a lot of investment is coming back to US, to Europe, and because Poland is still very competitive country, we are benefiting from this nearshoring trend, and Poland actually is every year among top 3-5 destination in Europe in terms of investment. So it would be a good time in terms of investment, in my opinion, as long as there won't be any new shock. Hopefully not. From the perspective of relationship with European Union, the current clash and deadlock was very ineffective for both parties. So I hope that this relations will be more normal. I'm not so sure that the relationship with the Germany will change dramatically, because in Germany we have SPD, and the current prime minister, most likely Donald Tusk, is from EPP. So, but I believe, as it was said, this relationship should improve. And there would be huge debate in Poland and across the Europe about the changes of the treaties in the next 2 years, and actually it will define the model of European Union for the next decade. So this discussion will take place in the next 2-3 years, and will dominate, I believe, in terms of the political debate also in Poland. Migration, changes of treaties will be critical topic in the discussions.
Thank you, and Ambassador Mosbacher.
I agree very much with what was just said. Let me just highlight the fact that I think the reality, and this is, and governments that do not face this reality straight on, that the public sector cannot afford any longer to support these projects by itself. It's got to be a public-private partnership, and governments that quickly adapt to that reality and develop formulas that will attract private sector money will be the winners. It is impossible for the public sector to support this kind of investment by itself, and that is just a reality. So it'll be interesting to see how well the new government comes to that reality, and what it develops to attract that. I do think that the relationship with the EU is certainly going to be better, but I do think the EU has some real challenges. It has shown some very serious failures with respect to its energy policy over the last 2 decades, with respect to how it's handled Ukraine, and how this war came about with respect to those energy policies. So I think that there's some reckoning there, and it'll be interesting to see how, if the EU can make those adjustments, and or do they go back to their old ways? that will also play a big role in how Poland behaves with respect to its own independence and what it needs to grow, and whether it will have a voice in the EU that it deserves to have. And that remains to be seen.
These are important issues. Thank you, Ambassador Mosbacher, for raising them. I think this discussion is ahead of Poland and ahead of us, and it's going to be very critical, both for the future of Poland, but also for the future of the EU and the future of the European-US relations. We still have a bit more than 10 minutes. I would like to ask whether there are any other questions. I have one question to Paweł, that maybe Paweł could shed some light on the domestic changes that may have caused the former government to effectively lose the parliamentary majority they had. The question here is also about the public sentiment. Did the public sentiment change, or what were the reasons, the underlying reasons for the change of power in Poland? So, Paweł, I know you're not a politician. I do not expect you to provide comprehensive answer, but since you live in Poland and you understand what is going on, please, maybe you can tackle this one.
So, as you have mentioned at the beginning, that the ruling party still won the elections because they won 35% support, but which is quite amazing. The first time in the history of Poland when it was the first election with the Peace Party, in which Peace Party has won the election. Even despite all these challenges and shocks, I believe to a large extent it was the result of good performance of the economy, and over the last few years the level of inequalities has go down, the level of cohesion in the society has improved, and Poles clearly believe that we are able to manage the economic challenges pretty effectively. Poland has the sixth highest real GDP growth since 2018 in Europe. So despite all the shocks, so it was on the positive side. Of course, on the negative side, I believe that the key reason why the ruling party actually has lost was already mentioned, abortion topic, which was present in the debate over the last few years after the ruling of Constitutional Court. As well, I believe that the ruling party was not able to really address the young people with the good offers. So, in my opinion, that there was two key reasons. They were too far right in the whole narration. But we'll see. I hope that the changes currently in Poland won't be won't create a chaos in the policy. And there will be, of course, more turbulent time given the temperature of the politics currently. But I hope that the key direction of the policy will be continued.
Thank you, Paweł. And we have another question that concerns the migration issues. On one hand, Poland shielded itself from the migration coming from Middle East, and the one that was perpetrated by Belarusian authorities that allowed illegal migration, or wanted to allow illegal migration to Europe through the territory of Poland. But on the other hand, Poland also adopted this open door policy for Ukrainian migrants. And the question here is, what will be the policy going forward? Would any significant changes in terms of migration policy be implemented in Poland? What are your views? And that's an open question to both of our panelists. And then we're going to be wrapping up.
Well, let me just say that I think Poland's policy, this is a challenge for not just Poland, but for many countries. And I think Poland's policy so far has been pretty solid, has proven to have worked. I do think there will be pressure from the European Union on the new government to liberalize those policies, simply because it's been a criticism of the European Union, Germany and France particularly, that Poland did not open its border to their migration policy. So I think there is there's a risk that there will be pressure, and given the resetting the relationship with the EU, the new government may feel that they need to show their cooperation in that respect.
So I believe that the recent elections prove that we are a strong democratic country, and also the war in Ukraine proved that we are a very open society. Poland enjoyed the largest inflows of refugees and migrants since 2015 in the whole Europe. So it was 3 million people that are currently residents of Poland and came mostly from Ukraine, but not only, also from Belarus, India, Philippines, and other destinations, Turkey, and destinations in the course of the last 8 years. So actually, Poland enjoyed one of the largest inflows of migrants and then refugees in the whole Europe, and we proved that we are able to assimilate these migrants to the society, mostly because of the cultural fit and the high labor participation among these migrants in the economy. Because the key problem with migration, in my opinion, in Europe, but to some extent also I understand in the US, is that some of the nations have very low labor activity. So there is a research showing that the migrants from Middle East in the Western Europe has 10 percentage points lower labor activity compared to the rest of the society. And with this low labor participation, we are coming to another problems, because lack of job creates other challenges, inequalities and crimes, and this is actually the problem of the West Europe currently, especially France, to some extent Germany, and there is a huge challenge for Europe, because there is a growing pressure from Africa and Middle East according to migration. Clearly, what has happened in the border with Belarus, Polish-Belarus border, was a hybrid war from Russia, because they organize the inflows of migrants from the Middle East, setting up the lines from Middle East. So this is very difficult topic. So far, I believe Poland managed this problem properly, but also when we see the growing far right parties in Germany or in France, European Union has to do also to do with its policy. It has to be more strict because we are very close to the maximum capacity of absorption of migrants from different directions.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your answers. I agree, Pavel, that it's a complicated issue. The migration on one hand, Europe is facing low birth rate, and the labor market is tight, and the economy is running at the potential. That probably can mean that the European labor market will be able to absorb some of the labor force. On the other hand, we have a challenging situation globally with deteriorating economic conditions, where people are not only affected by worse but poor economic conditions, and they want to have a certain standard of living. How to reconcile those two is going to be an issue for many of the European governments, also for the US government going forward. And we're going to probably tune into those discussions in the future. But I wanted to thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Mosbacher. Thank you, Pavel, for joining us for discussion today at the Common Sense Society. These conversations that we hold help us to uphold the principles that are indispensable to human flourishing and happiness. I would like to encourage everyone to join us in building a future that draws on the best of the past. And those who are interested, please visit the commonsensesociety.org website and subscribe to our email list, follow CSS on social media, or join us at an upcoming webinar or in-person event. So again, thank you so much, and we're gonna definitely stay in touch, and I really wholeheartedly invite everyone to follow our page and stay tuned to our future events. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless.
Bye.